Hello, my friend. This is Heather. Welcome to the Back to Me podcast. This is another episode of discovering new and valuable ways to help you be a better version of you and to help you feel 100% living your life the way you choose. And the amazing human that I'm speaking with this week is Jamie Lerner. Hi, Jamie. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me.
No problem. I'm glad we could connect. And we were having a little bit of conversation. You are a well-being therapist, which encompasses can encompass so many things, which is good because well-being, I mean, this is but back to me wellness your way, right? So it's like wellness can be whatever it needs to be for each person. And the first I mean the audience knows the first thing that I'm always super curious about is how or what led you to become a well-being therapist.
Well, I was always interested in psychology, and I got my master's in social work, and I had a private practice, and I did a lot of psychotherapy, and I did not feel like I was assisting people in any way. So, after a period of time, and I probably waited too long, um, I gave it up and I traveled and studied, and now I'm doing something really different, which is assisting people in assisting themselves to get from where they are to where they'd like to be.
Right? And it is interesting that you went into one venue to try and help. What do you think about that structure made it so you didn't feel like you were helping people?
I think when we're always asking people to look back, it doesn't really give them a chance to even think about moving forward and using everything that occurred to them or happened to them in the past. It really becomes their very excuse why they cannot or do not want to move forward.
Right?
So that didn't feel good to me. Um, I think that certainly there are people that thrive and that um, kind of therapeutic setting, but I wasn't feeling good about what I was doing. So I think that's why I really made the shift for myself.
Right. And I know that I have kind of had that. I know that talk therapy really does help a lot of people, but just for myself, I felt like I don't want to keep talking about it. I just want to move on past all of this stuff. And there are lots of ways to do it. It's interesting. I used hypnotherapy. So what kind of tools do you use when you're helping people kind of like I guess what is first of all, let's start with what's your philosophy of wellness? Like where do
Uh,
you find that lands?
so I think well being is our birthright. And I think that when we come into this world, that we're connected to ourselves. And then over time, I think that we are um, consciously and subconsciously directed to look outside of ourselves for every possible answer. And so we get further and further away from ourselves, and we forget that we are indeed our own greatest resource. And when I tell people that, they just don't believe that. I mean, they really haven't heard that because the message has always been everyone else knows better for you than you. So it's interesting because when you can give people another way to look at something, I think they can take a deep breath and maybe feel a little sense of relief and understand that not only is this not going to be difficult, it can also be quite fun.
Right? And it's interesting. I mean, I had a conversation recently with someone about something similar to this where ever since you were a little kid, you were being told, what to eat, when to sleep, how to do this, how to do that. And I guess that's your first indoctrination to you just somebody else knows better than you. And I guess I don't even know how parents would manage if they couldn't tell their kids when to go to bed and what to eat and when to sleep.
Well, I have to say, I was blessed, and I grew up in a family where I was always connected to myself from my earliest memory, but I didn't have a connection with my mom. And although they were very supportive and loving and allowing, I really did not have much rules or structure. So it was wonderful in so many ways that I was able to really um, look inward for all of my direction. And I
Right.
feel like that was an amazing thing. I don't think that consciously my parents had a clue, but it was a lovely gift. So,
You didn't have a tiger mom.
no, I did not.
And I guess if you've got, speaking of like tiger moms, I know that they do it out of love, but if you've had a parent who has controlled you your whole life, um, it can be hard and scary, I guess, to take responsibility for your own decisions.
Yes, and I think when we begin to understand that oftentimes parents and other people, teachers, authoritative figures, they do this out of fear. They do not trust themselves. And so, in unconsciously, they do not feel that others should trust themselves either. And I think that when we begin to look at that and understand it, then there is intuition in all of us. And we always get a sense of that. What we do with it, that's another choice or story. But when we can remember times when we knew, we didn't know how or why, we didn't even listen to what we knew, but we knew, then we can start to understand that our inner being, inner knowing is available to direct us at any time.
Right. I think about those times. It must have been in a book I read or something about intuition where it said, it's like, like you knew something, but you ignored it. And then afterwards you went, oh, I should have listened to myself.
And that's true. I've never heard anyone say I should not have listened to myself, but you hear people
Right.
all the time saying I should have listened to myself. So I really ask people to remember those times. It doesn't matter if they did or didn't, but it is a reminder that we do know for ourselves. And that's the
Yeah.
power, not the choice to listen or not, but to know that it's there.
Right. I started practicing strengthening my intuition probably in the last year or two. And one of the things that I do is I ask myself what kind of tea I'm going to drink in the morning, because that's not a high pressure decision that, if I choose the wrong tea, something's going to happen. And I love tea. So it's like I stand in front of my tea drawer and ask my higher self, or whatever you want to call it, intuition, which tea today? Because I guess, I mean, you have to build up that trust again. If you don't trust yourself, do you think that's what the fear is? Like the fear that authoritative figures and parents are like, they have a fear that their intuition or their inner knowing is wrong? Do you think that's what the fear is?
I don't think it's a conscious thing. I think that what
Okay.
happens is that we translate parents telling us what to do all the time into consequences. When I was growing up, we didn't have consequences, we had outcomes. So we made a decision. If it was an undesired decision or outcome, then we made a different decision. So there wasn't this sense of impending doom about choosing. It was a very relaxed way to intuitively kind of feel our way through our choices and then make different choices if we weren't happy with the outcome. And I think that is a
Smart.
good way to look at it as an adult because there really is no consequence if we think about choosing the wrong tea. Well, there is no wrong tea. Maybe you'll make a choice and then you'll pour your hot water and decide, well, you don't really want this today. And so you just pick a different one. So these are just little things that really, I think, help us get back to ourselves and know ourselves.
Right. And I guess it's a bit of a journey to be able to find that reconnection. If you haven't exercised that muscle, it's not really a muscle, but that muscle for a little while. Um,
The hardest part is to quiet the mind chatter and to be sit with yourself for a few minutes, maybe first thing in the morning. I ask people to come up with like one thing that they really appreciate about themselves, not what someone else appreciates about you, but what do you appreciate about yourself just in this moment, about yourself, for yourself. And that kind of like helps people focus on themselves and what they're feeling.
Right. Have you ever had anyone who didn't have anything?
Yes, and so I would say to them, what would you like someone to appreciate about you? Because usually when we want someone to appreciate something about ourselves, it's projection. So that's a good clue. It's like it's so important that we do things for ourselves, but most people wish that other people would do those things for them.
Right.
It is not as gratifying as if you make a choice to do something for yourself.
Yeah. That's a good way to look at it. Um, we forget that that people are, mirrors for us and reflecting things back for us, and I guess that comes from that external focus all the time. That it's not me, it's them.
Exactly, but it's never the other person. And people don't like to hear that. And yet, all our power is in taking personal responsibility. So
Right.
when we get there, it's our superpower.
And that's where you go back to the outcomes, because I think people fear taking responsibility for their lives, because what if they make a mistake and there's a consequence instead of something didn't work, learned a lesson, go to a different outcome. I guess that's where that change in that framing helps immensely.
Yes. And when we can begin to be more gentle with ourselves and
Mhm.
more nurturing of ourselves, then I think our eye becomes softer to the outside, to the inside, and those choices are not so dire. It's just a moment and then the next moment.
Right. And um, so the nurturing of yourself and nourishing of yourself, is that like a physical nurturing, or is that an energetic nurturing, nourishing?
I think sitting with a cup of coffee in the morning and really enjoying it is nurturing. You know, there are many different things, and everybody's idea of nurturing is different, but it's such a private thing. There's no right or wrong way. The important thing is, can you do it for yourself, even for 5 minutes?
Did you read that book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It?
No, but I love the title because your
Right.
life does depend on it.
Um, and the name of the author has escaped me, but it's a gentleman who was suffering from depression and burnout and stress, and somehow I can't remember exactly how it went because I read it a while ago. He came to this realization that he needed to love himself, so he would just had this constant blow in his head. I love myself. I love myself. And he wants people to practice looking themselves in the eye in the mirror, because you can look in the mirror and not look yourself in the eye. Look yourself in the eye and say that you love yourself like 10 times every day. And there's people who can't do it.
Well, it's too big of a leap. Like, you can't go from no connection to like going through the motions of, it's like affirmations. I'm not big on affirmations because unless you have a connection to what you're actually saying to yourself about yourself, it's kind of empty. It doesn't really resonate and it doesn't really work. But to sit, I don't know, with a cup of coffee and wrap your hands around the warm cup and to whatever have that feel of appreciation or self worth or deserving, I think that goes a long way. That is nurturing and nourishing.
Right. And it is like, I can see like it would be like going from, kindergarten to graduate degree, to look at yourself in the eye and
Maybe like
have that,
baby
and
steps.
have you, because there is energy behind emotions, right? We know emotions carry an energetic vibration. And I have the same kind of feeling about mantras. It's like you can mantra all day long. If you don't have the emotional vibration behind it, that's not going to work. I think that was one of the I saw a podcast about why people were failing at The Secret. When everybody was like, I'm just going to visualize. I'm like, no, that's not what it is. You need the vibration. You need the vibration to go out there. And so, do you take people through a series of exercises, or how do you help people kind of find their way back in?
There's tools that I give people and encourage people to use. But I don't think there's any right way to do this. I think it's so individual. And I really encourage people not to talk about it with other people
Mm,
because it's such a personal thing. Once you make choices for yourself, the downfall is the sharing. Someone will have a point of view that really shoots you down and makes you feel bad because it's different than your point of view. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to reassure yourself that you can trust yourself, know yourself, love yourself, appreciate yourself. And that has absolutely nothing to do with another person.
right. Do you find that people eventually are strong enough that they can share that with other
I
people?
think it doesn't matter because when you get to that place, you don't need to share it. You live it, you step
Right.
into it, and you feel it every minute. And that is the sharing to become the living, breathing example of what is possible. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, you are obviously the living, breathing example because otherwise you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, so I don't think words teach, and I don't use a lot of words. I find myself that when I'm with people, I'm interactive, but I'm also quiet. And because I'm quiet and present, it puts other people at ease. And that in itself is a lovely gift to others to feel so good in your skin that that allows other people to feel good in their own skin.
Right. I'm just remembering I used to be a teacher at the shiatsu school, and I remember a lady one time, she didn't like people who were quiet because they made her unnerved. And that's an interesting kind of idea that they needed the noise. I wonder if it's to distract them or.
But I think vibrationally,
Hmm,
people get it. Like, it's not quiet because you're judging. And that was probably her concern, that the quiet was a judgment of her. When
hmm,
in fact, she was probably judging herself every single minute and she was projecting that. So
right,
when you come to a space unarmed, undefended, I think it does put people at ease because you're at ease. You set the
right.
tone.
And so your journey to get to this place where you are this, like your example of your philosophies, and you wrote a book about it, right? Was the book about your journey or about just practices and thoughts?
So the book is the ever loving essence of you, and that came about because when my mom was sick and in the ICU, and I sat with her, and I was an adult. This is already like 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I, for the first time, really felt all the love pour through her into me. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is the beginning of our mother and daughter relationship. And then she transitioned. And I realized that my mom, who was like an unbelievable force of nature, lived like 10 lives in her life. She sidetracked the most important relationship, and that was a relationship with herself.
Wow.
And I realized that it's so important to understand that the connection and relationship we have with ourselves is really the foundation for every other relationship we go on to have or not. So, The Ever Loving Essence of You is a book that came out of that. And it's really gentle and loving, and there's tools in there, and it's timeless and whatever. But it's just a reminder, I think, of things that we already know for ourselves, about ourselves, but maybe haven't been given the permission to tap into.
And where do you need that permission from, right?
Unfortunately, it starts from the outside. But as soon as you hear it and you go inward, I think to navigate becomes very like easy. It's like coming home to yourself.
So you help people with the navigation?
I help people remember how to reconnect with their inner being, inner knowing.
And did your mom find her connection before she transitioned?
I don't think so. She didn't even know she wasn't connected, but she busied every single solitary moment of her day in her life to sidestep that relationship. And she was amazing. All the things she was involved in, all the people she helped, but at the end of the day, I think that when we're so busy sidestepping that connection with ourselves, that it's really hard to connect in the way that's meaningful ultimately to us. That's what we're always looking for, love in all the wrong places.
Yes. And you can see those people who whose days are so full that they don't even have 2 seconds to stop and spend any time. Forget about connecting with themselves, even like just sitting down and having a cup of coffee, which I guess is connecting with yourself. From the time they get up, they're on the run. And I feel like women are more guilty. Of course, I'm a little biased of that than
Mhm.
men most of the time.
Well, we use our family as our excuse. We use work. We use everything and anything we can. And that's our excuse for not doing things for ourselves with ourselves. However, we're still wanting other people to fill that space for us. And therein lies the problem. We end up getting very resentful. We end up getting very, um, I think, not giving in the way that we would really like to be giving of ourselves. Because when you're giving out of because you think you should, it doesn't really feel good on the receiving end.
Or
You
if you're
know?
giving because you need them to give something back,
Exactly.
like with that expectation.
Conditional. Exactly. And then you're always disappointed. And then the disappointment comes through. And so we cheat ourselves of, once again, the real gift, which is the connection with ourselves.
Right. That's the reason this podcast is called Back to Me.
Yes.
because because my wish for the world is that they do have that inner connection and that inner resource and fill themselves up and love themselves, because I know that if people were taking, even just from a superficial point of view, taking proper physical care of themselves, they would be in a much better place to be able to give what they want to give.
Exactly. But most people haven't made that connection that it comes from them. They're searching outside of themselves for every possible way, and it never works.
Right.
So,
So it always starts with the within.
yes, that
Always.
might sound scary, but you know, if that is available to you 24/7,
You're
your
the only
inner
person that
knowing.
is with you for your whole life, right?
Yeah.
And you're just reminded me of, I had an acquaintance that when this was probably like 30 years ago, when I lived in another city, and he was a serial dater. He always had a new girlfriend every time I met up with him. And one day I asked him, this was prior to my whole mindfulness kind of world. I was an accountant back then. I just asked him, like, why don't you just stay single for a little while? And he said he didn't like to spend time with himself.
Yeah. And that's very honest.
It
Yeah.
was very honest, and it shocked the pants off of me, let me tell you. I just thought, wow, I think you're a nice fella. Otherwise, I wouldn't hang out with you. Like, what is that all about? And I think it's kind of sad that people don't understand or spend time in their inner world, because the inner world is so rich and so vast. It's like there's so much good in there.
We are not often directed to that place.
No,
So I think it's getting better. I think that there are more opportunities and more examples of people that are um, assisting people and assisting themselves. But I would say that mostly we're still being directed outside of ourselves 99% of the time.
I won't even go down the conspiracy path that it's a plan.
Well, I don't know if it's a plan, but we have a choice. Like you can turn your television off. You can make a decision about what kind of news you want to read. I mean, we are in control of our experience. And, that's where personal power is like a superpower.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are all superheroes. We just don't believe it because we watch too much TV. Too much TV. And if people want to find you, where do they find you?
I have a website. It's www.jamie-lerner.com. Easy.
Jamie-lerner.com. And if you're driving, friends, in podcast land, don't try to write it down right now.
No.
Take care of yourselves. It'll be in the show notes. You can go back and get it. Don't worry. I won't leave you hanging. And your book, can they get it on the website or do they go somewhere?
No, it's on Amazon. Yeah,
Beautiful. The world where everything exists, you can get everything
exactly.
on Amazon, apparently. I wonder if you can buy a car yet on Amazon. I don't know that I would. That'd be a
Well, only if they would take it back, if deliver it and pick it up, if you didn't want
right.
it. So
Imagine Amazon knocking at your door with the package. It's a car. So before we end, I am curious, and I always give my guests the last word of if you have because you've already shared a lot of really awesome information, but do you have a final word or five of wisdom for our fabulous friends in podcast land?
yes, and I know this sounds easy, but it gets much easier. Know yourself, love yourself, and trust yourself because there is nobody that knows better for you than you.
Yes, and it sounds simple, but it may not be easy in the beginning, right?
It gets easier.
It
It's
gets
like using a muscle you haven't used in a while, and muscle has memory.
beautiful. Remember when you were a little kid, you always knew what you needed. So go
Well, you
back
certainly always knew what you wanted.
to that. Right? This is
So
true,
go back to that because it's very possible you still know what you want.
right? Yeah, I think everybody does. They just don't want to admit it. Beautiful. That's amazing. Jamie, thank you so much. I'm so glad we connected. I love the
Thank
message
you.
that you're sending into the world. I think your book is probably, I have full honesty, I haven't read it yet.
It's okay. It's not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere. That's a
You
great thing
know?
about books. The stack next to my bed gets bigger
Yeah.
and bigger the more podcasts I do.
And there's also an audio version on Spotify if you don't
Even
like to
better.
read. So
Beautiful. Yes, friends, check out. I'm a big audiobook person, so because I'm on my feet walking more than I'm sitting and reading.
or in
So
your
that's
car
amazing,
driving. Yeah.
right? Good places and treadmills. Good places to consume audio books and podcasts. So that's amazing. My friends, thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank
My
you.
friends in podcast land. This is this is this is an important message for you. So I'm going to invite you to take just 5 small minutes and sit quietly and contemplate the messages from this podcast. And of course, don't forget to subscribe while you're doing that. And if you know someone who is maybe doing too much and maybe trying to avoid something and you just have a sense that they need this, send this over to them. Share and send them some love. Thank you, my friends. Thank you, Jamie. Stay well. Peace out. We will talk to you next time.